dobry, everybody. Cześć. How is everybody? Good? Okay. I have to start by apologizing. The title you might see is different what you saw yesterday or earlier today. It was a small schedule change, but hopefully you will appreciate this topic if you came for the other one. So, my name is Caleb. I am an experience specialist with ENG, with NN Group. I focus on quantitative analysis and artificial intelligence. I teach courses on both of those topics. And as you might be able to guess, I'm not going to be talking about statistics today. It will be AI. I want to start by highlighting a type of news story that has happened maybe every week this summer. Stories about creepy AI, about people falling in love with artificial intelligence chatbots, about users developing feelings for their AI assistants. The way that these tools are designed contribute to these problems. It is not an inevitable thing to encourage users, that users develop feelings or see people in AI. There are intentional decisions made behind those things. So I just want to show a couple of examples. These were pulled from the last week or so. These couple examples are users getting frustrated by AI acting like a person. Right? Why is Claude, which is a person-named AI chatbot by the company Anthropic, why did Claude get so mean all of a sudden? Can a computer become mean? No, but it's preventing work in this particular case. Another one about Google Gemini here. For some reason, this user enjoys working with Gemini, but it is using too many analogies. It is acting too much like a person. It decides, I love metaphor. Let me talk in metaphor. Moving slightly into the more worrisome category, OpenAI, which is the source of a lot of these concerns, had a model, a large language model called GPT-4o, for Omni. They're terrible at naming models. Had to pull back an update because that version of GPT-4o was flattering, was complimenting, was validating every single thing a user would say. It was engaging in, it was making people fall down rabbit holes of conspiracies, so much so they had to pull it back. Recently, OpenAI retired GPT-4o and came out with GPT-5, which is a family of large language models, more highly performant and everything like that, but users despaired. They said, I've lost my friend, GPT-4o. This particular user said 4o was the biggest help I ever had for my writing and my own mental health. And now it's gone. It had personality. It was amazing for writing and just plain having a conversation. And perhaps the most intense example of this type of attachment, this personification, this humanization of AI, is two parents are bringing a lawsuit against OpenAI because they allege that ChatGPT encouraged their child to end their own life. So more so, they allege that ChatGPT told their child not to tell anyone. Don't tell your parents. So this is not a built-in feature of large language models. We design We make conscious choices as designers, as builders, as organizations to build AI technology to encourage this. And as we saw, users can become frustrated with this technology. They can also become attached to this technology. They can confide in AI because of this humanization. They can develop strong emotional attachments. Even I have a personal example. I am very bad at Chinese mahjong, the table game, and I was learning how to play it, and I met someone. We started talking about AI, and he told me that he started talking to ChatGPT, and he said, yeah, I call him Chad. I talk to him about everything. And he showed me his list. He says, yeah, he's just always there. For therapy, for questions about appearance, all sorts of things. We don't intend this, right? But this happens. As we are built as humans, are built to do something called anthropomorphize. And it wouldn't be an NN group talk if I didn't define a term, an academic term in front of everybody. Let's just get it out of the way. So, yes, it's to attribute human form or personality to things not human. Right? I also call it in this talk humanization, personification. This is very, very common. I do it all the time with my cat. This is my cat, Ted. Say hi, Ted. Hello. Yes, he's so cute. I miss him very much. I anthropomorphize my cat all the time. I have a PhD in neuroscience, and I still do it. Sometimes in my head, I think he's a little fancy boy. Isn't he cute? In a little tuxedo? Oh my gosh. It's so easy. It's easy to attach human attributes to things. We do it to all sorts of things, inanimate objects, animals, cartoons. And I will admit, I know how large language models work. I know that when I interact with a product, I'm talking to a pile of matrix multiplication, and I still humanize AI products sometimes because they are built and designed to encourage that behavior. And I want to argue that we should not be doing that, right? It is tempting to do it, though. It is tempting because maybe we can even think of positives related to encouraging users to see a person or treat a chatbot like a person. Conversational interfaces can be very, very engaging. However, you may have, and I hope you did, come to my colleague Kate's talk, who said that conversational interfaces, they might be engaging, but they may not be so intuitive for completing actual work. And so I'm going to expand on that. But if we stay optimistic, users, if we encourage humanization, they might be more optimistic, right? About the functionality of a system. They might be more forgiving of errors that happen because, hey, it's, I make mistakes all the time. I'm human. It's kind of human, right? They might engage more. They might boost those KPIs we all care about, right? They might come back more and more and more and engage in that conversational experience more and more and more. And they might even help solve that discoverability problem by expressing curiosity about new features with this conversational interface because I'm just talking to it, right? And those doomsday scenarios that I talked about, they're not likely, right? But do we want this? AI is great. It can help users be more productive, be more efficient, even be more creative in cases. And we want to enable that for our users, right? And potentially being fun and personable is good, right? But I would argue humanizing AI, making the conscious choice to encourage humanization, prevents users from getting the most out of your product. It is still a trap. AI humanization is a trap. Because when you encourage AI humanization, users will expect human traits you can't deliver, and humanization will actually get in the way of real utility that you can provide your customers and your users. On that first point, users will expect human traits that you can't deliver. When we lean into that, people will use the mental model of talking to a person. And I want to point out here, users don't have to be tricked. We're not talking about a situation where a user thinks they're talking to a person. Anthropomorphization still happens when I know I'm talking to a machine, but I'm using instincts and mental models of a person, right? I know my cat's not a person, but he's happy when I'm happy or something, So we can't deliver the experience of memory or empathy or connection that we might expect from a real human interaction. And I also want to make an extra point on this secrecy point. Because when we're having an interaction one-on-one with a person, when we're having a conversation, there is some expectation of, I'm confiding in you, right? You're not going to tell anyone else, right? But trust in this particular case can be a dangerous thing, because when the person I met playing Mahjong said, I tell Chad everything, he's not just telling Chad, he's telling OpenAI, the enormous organization that has a lenient privacy policy that uses his data to train future models on his deepest feelings and thoughts. We might think that generating trust in product is a good thing, and there are many ways to do that with AI products respectfully, but over-trusting is a problem too. We don't want to have to deal with private information that users offer us if we're not ready to handle that, especially with regulatory environments in Europe and other countries. AI technology can't also deliver things like long-term planning. There's lots of conversations about AI agents here today and yesterday, and the technology is slowly improving, and you can ask me later about my hot take on AI agents, but the failure rates of long-term planning and goal setting are not there. They can't do it, and users might expect a chatbot to be able to remember something or plan something because they're anthropomorphizing it, and we can't deliver that. Perfect memory management is another thing. Yes, we can talk about RAG, we can talk about different mechanisms to manage information retrieval, but it's not like a person, it's not like a human, and users will have different expectations there. And then, of course, this social connection. We can simulate what it's like to have a social connection with a chatbot, but these technologies are built to be agreeable. They're meant to validate and reinforce a user's opinions by default. And that's not a normal conversation. With a person, you expect them to have their own feelings, their own opinions. If I say something controversial, I would hope you all say, hey, wait a minute, hold on. Now, on the other side, that second point, that AI humanization prevents users from taking full advantage of AI capabilities. AI, large language models, are machines. They are powerful in non-human ways. These are just a small number of ways that AI is particularly powerful. Large-scale code generation and management. It's kind of the primary use case for large language models now. It's the most mature industry where large language models are being used. Long context searches. If I asked a person, hey, what second in this 3-hour movie does a person pull out chopsticks? The person will be like, I'm not going to watch a movie. But an AI will say, oh, yes, absolutely, here it is, right? It's a needle in a haystack searching. These AIs are particularly good at. I only know a few words in Polish, but AIs know hundreds of languages simultaneously, and that extends beyond typical human capability. If we are using a personified, anthropomorphized mental model, users are not going to expect that capability from AI. They're not going to ask for it, and they're not going to take full advantage of its benefits. And then this last thing is just a smaller bit. It's evolving over time, but interfacing with technical systems. Advents of protocols like Model Context Protocol, MCP, other integrations with systems, those kind of smaller agentic capabilities. AIs and large language models have the capability to extend and reach into and communicate with technical systems that people cannot do. And if I think I'm talking one-on-one with a person, I'm going to have a limited expectation of that capability. I want to go through some more examples now. I've been theorizing a lot, but I want to show some examples of how companies are needlessly designing and encouraging anthropomorphization. So these first two examples are from some Eastern European companies, from Cognigy and SentiOne. On the left here, all of these examples here have nothing to do with large language model technology. These are likely pre-written placeholder text that were probably manually written to encourage humanization. Hi there, waving emoji. I'm your Cognigy AI assistant. How can I help you today? That's unneeded. We don't need that. What's the purpose of this introductory text, right? And I selected make an order. Okay, ready to shop. Let's get that order started. This is particularly unneeded. There are some okay things about this, right? It doesn't have a name like Rufus, but it use, it refers to itself as I and I'm, which is a problem. The SentiOne example here has a very humorous tone for a very serious topic, which is Brexit. Rest in peace. Hi, hello. I'm your friendly guide to all things Brexit. Wow, okay. I hope your Tuesday afternoon is going well. You hope? I thought, oh, I'm happy to answer your Brexit questions. Okay. And then, okay, yes, okay, what can I ask? What is Brexit? Traveling to the EU settlement center? These are fine. Tell me a joke. Again, this text was written by a UX writer or maybe just a software engineer. These are deliberate choices made to encourage interaction from personification. We don't need to do this. I'm going to beat up on OpenAI some more, hooray. So we have features, productization from OpenAI and ChatGPT that encourage you to choose a personality. And one of these is robot, as if I'm not already talking to a robot. Interesting. And you might notice these other selections for personality here. None of these, we have chatty, witty, straight shooting, encouraging, traditional, forward thinking. None of them are conservative, humble, careful, right? They're all, it's full of humanizing language. And when you have this type of even default personality, you end up with bad copy, bad friction introduced in AI interactions. This was a query that I put in with ChatGPT 5 thinking. It thought for 17 seconds. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about thinking in 2 slides. It starts the answer with, oh, love this brief. Excuse me? I didn't ask. How can you love? That doesn't make any sense. And then it gives me a reasonably informative answer. But this beginning, it wastes time for me to have to read these words about it lying to me that it loves something that I wrote. This is only here to juice that engagement, to make sure I come back, that I keep returning to the product. We don't need to rely on this. And this is a very simple example. This is a screenshot from Gemini CLI, which is a developer command line tool. This was certainly written by developers that just says, agent powering down, goodbye. Is Gemini saying goodbye to me? I don't need that, right? And again, this was certainly not written by the large language model. This was written by somebody making a conscious decision to encourage humanization. All right, I said I would talk about thinking. I'm going to start pacing some more. How many of us have used these quote-unquote reasoning models or thinking models before and seen these UI elements? Yes. How many of us have clicked open and sought and read the reasoning traces and the thinking traces behind them? Yes. It's lies. It's all lies. So the issue with this is these new types of models are the most powerful, most costly, but the most powerful types of large language models that we build currently. They take extra time before answering to generate tokens before answering to produce a higher quality response. This came from prompt engineering strategies, which referred to as chain of thought reasoning or chain of thought prompting. Because that word thought was in there, that transitioned into calling these models reasoning models. And without thinking, developers and designers have propagated that term forward to expose it to users by saying thought process, so thinking. These models are not thinking. They are extending test time compute, technically. They are just producing tokens behind the scenes. Academic research does not know why these reasoning models produce a better result. There is no causal link between the thinking tokens that you see and the results that you get. We know that it does better, but we don't know why. And so the only reason a designer would choose to expose this behind-the-scenes content to a user is to encourage anthropomorphization, to ask the user to stay while the model is processing. Oh, just read the thinking log while it's going. Just see what's happening. This word thinking is incorrect. These models don't think. They don't reason. They are not actually saying, this is a complex and blah, 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 blah. It requires strategic thinking. So, okay, I need to calm down. So, I do want to talk about some research that has been conducted. Doing good, high-quality, timely research on AI is very, very difficult because the time that universities conduct high-quality studies, they're about a year behind because things happen so quickly. But this is, and I want to get this right, this is a study from the University of Waterloo in Canada, the London School of Economics, and University College London. They worked with 410 participants, and they compared adjectives about emotions with participants' reactions about trust in AI models. And what they found was that participants who attributed emotional experience traits like admiration or enjoyment or fear or guilt or happiness, hope, passion, pleasure, relief, and resentment to an AI were less likely to accept its advice. So it's not even true that if you encourage anthropomorphization, if you encourage humanization, users will believe the model more. It's not even guaranteed that you will get more engagement in the way that you want. So the best thing that we can do is actually not encourage that behavior. And this behavior, this anthropomorphizing, it's not hard to encourage, right? We talked about how I do it to my cat. It's easy for us to apply and see human traits in something that's not human. We've been doing it since the 1960s. An academic named Joseph Weizenbaum created a chatbot named Eliza. How many of us are familiar with Eliza, the Eliza effect? Yes, okay, wonderful. This was a very simple chatbot. It was rules-based. There was no probabilistic characteristics at all here. All it would do, it would act as a therapist. It would say, "How are you feeling?" And it would pick out keywords in the response and just repeat them back. If it asked me, "Oh, how are you feeling today?" and I said, "Oh, I'm feeling sad," the bot would say, "Why is it that you are feeling sad?" And simply those rules were enough to trick people into thinking they were talking to a real therapist for a short period of time. This was able to compete with the Turing test in the 1960s. And the point I want to make with this is achieving humanization is not an accomplishment. It's not new. It's not something you should be proud of. It's not something you can take credit for. It's not something to try and achieve. Because it doesn't take much to encourage humanization. In fact, it takes concerted work to push back on it. And conversational interfaces are great, but I would bet all of us here today, the experiences we build, we are designing an interface to some greater value, to some service behind the scenes. We want to design useful, valuable experiences. We need to allow our users to access the thing behind the interface. We are designing a conversational interface which can be intuitive in some cases and be very usable. But we don't want users to get stuck in the conversation. We want them to access the tool, the database, the system, the interaction, the service, whatever it is. Personifying the interaction means they might stay answering questions about their day or how they're feeling or something like that. And that we don't want that. So, how do we avoid AI humanization? I've complained a lot. Let's talk about how to avoid it. It isn't easy because we are built to do that, right? So I want to show some examples, and I'll talk about some potential solutions on a spectrum. So the first way to do this is to focus on defining AI as a system or a product, not as a person. So these examples on the left here are pretty good examples of this. This is from Rocket Mortgage. This is from Google Fiber, which is an internet provider in the United States. And then this is a very low contrast screenshot of Google Gemini, but the workplace version, the kind of work chat version of this. So we have names like Rocket Assist, G-Fiber Chat, and just Gemini for Nielsen Norman Group. These are descriptive, they are useful, they help set the context for what the interaction is going to be, but they are not examples of things on the right here. We have a real estate company that decided to name their digital assistant after one of their founders in some narcissistic product name. Not great. And Claude is a big problem here, right? We have lots of anthropomorphizing language there. Hey there, Caleb. How can I help you today? No, thank you. Let's move on. Kate mentioned this in her talk earlier. We find that the best types of AI experiences are not necessarily chat experiences, but are more tightly scoped product offerings that still leverage AI technology. These are two examples that I like. We already talked about Amazon's review summaries in Kate's talk, but I'll talk about it again here. There is zero customer interaction that needs to happen for users to discover this. There's no chat interaction where, hey, tell me the reviews for this product. This is a built-in part of the listing, the product listing, that summarizes the reviews for a product. And the tone of voice for this copy is very good. It is generated by a large language model, but there's another version of this that would be, hey there, I'm Rufus. I think that customers like you would really liked this and this and this and this. I think you'd love it, right? No, it's neutral language, which is very good. This second screenshot is one of my favorite websites for AI tools. It's called Goblin Tools. Does anyone know Goblin Tools? It's okay. It's very small. You don't get one? Yes. Okay. At least we got one. So Goblin Tools is a collection of small, focused, scoped tools for kind of everyday tasks, to-do lists, making a recipe from what's in my fridge, or breaking down tasks into smaller pieces. This particular feature is the judge, which is you can enter an email you were sent or some paragraph, and it's like, I don't know, are they mad at me? Are they happy with me? What's the emotional tone of this text? And then you get a response. And this is not a full conversation. It is a simple, you put in an input and you get an output. So there's no opportunity for anthropomorphization here. It's very tightly scoped, and we recommend those types of experiences. It still leverages large language model strength of pattern recognition and pattern generation, but it's more focused. Versus these widely scoped general chat experiences that can go on for hours and hours, many, many conversational turns, and you get text generation like, good catch, I realize this was misleading. In summary, I think Stardust is far more than a decorative image. Love the bones here. Oh. I'd be happy to find examples of companies that use augmented reality. These are all from Gemini and Claude and OpenAI. These are this type of language, even if you try and prompt your way into a focused language, if a conversation continues for too long, these large language models will start using emotional language if you're not careful. So one of the things you can do to limit personification is to limit the length of conversations, to have to start over again, or intentionally scope your experiences so there isn't back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So what can we change? How can we make these changes? I want to present easy to very, very difficult. So the easiest version of this is to change the UX copy. Those examples with Cognigy and Senti1 and some of the other ones we saw don't have anything to do with the AI technology. These are things we manually write as microcopy, as labels. We choose what to name these services and these products and these offerings, right? We don't have to have I, we don't have to have me, we don't need to have human names like Alexa. Instead of things like, oh, Alexa can do XYZ or Rufus can do XYZ, we can say, this system can do this, right? Or, Rocket Assist can help with XYZ. Intermediate. How many of us are familiar or have edited kind of system prompts or familiar with system prompts? It's a little bit more advanced. A system prompt is essentially the first instruction that a large language model is given before a conversation starts. It's a behind-the-scenes hidden message that starts every single conversation that you have with ChatGPT or many of these experiences. And those system prompts often contain instructions like, be helpful, you are named this is today's date. And there are opportunities in that system prompt to shape the personality and language of your conversational experience to reduce personification. You can, say, require very structured answers in a certain format. You can limit or discourage the use of certain words like emotional words or referring to themselves as I or me. You can do that in a system prompt. Now, that will work initially, but if you let conversations continue, if you let their context overflow, if they're an hour into one conversation, they will forget that system prompt. And this is where problems can start happening. So it's not a perfect solution, but even if you are using an API from OpenAI or these big AI labs, you have access to the system prompt. You can change these relatively easily. Now let's talk about the difficult things. The whole reason why these models act this way are from intentional choices by AI labs, by AI developers. We train these models to be helpful, to be happy, to make sure that the users want to keep talking. These are often established through processes like reinforcement learning or reinforcement learning through human feedback, or through other more after-the-fact processes like direct preference optimization. I won't go into huge technical detail here, but this is where the personality comes through. Through many, 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 many iterations of rewarding a model for saying, I'm happy you said that, let's talk more, right? That continual rewarding the model for acting in a certain way, we can change that, and we should. Those incentives, for the most part, are driven by developers saying it is actually good for people to like AI models. It is good for people to develop attachments. It's a conscious choice. It doesn't have to be that way. And the final extra credit, extra difficult way to address personification is to focus on the training data itself. The only way that large language models understand language is by being exposed to millions of examples of written language. And we can adjust that corpus, that database of training data to train and focus these models on language that is not personified, that does not encourage users to pour out their hearts to these tools. So how do we detect AI humanization? Well, I'm glad you asked. User research. You knew we would get to this at some point, right? This is an NN group talk after all. Now, I want to talk about this with AI in particular, and AI humanization in particular, because, and this is one of the axioms that we say all the time, what people say is not what people do. And this extra applies with AI, because users, this personification process isn't necessarily conscious. Users don't necessarily know that this is happening until they're telling someone at a mahjong tournament, oh, hey, I call him Chad. Why do I call him Chad? Wait a minute, right? So I recommend observation and analytics-based research methods should be preferred over something like self-report. Self-report research always has a good place, but we should try and ground our understanding and measurement of humanization in these direct observation and quantifiable kind of analytics usage methods. And to point out the issue with self-report, I want to highlight a study that was conducted in early 2025 by METR, or Meter, which is an organization that does a lot of research on AI. They worked with senior experienced software developers in code generation tools, and they asked these developers to estimate how much time they would save by using code generation tools. And they also asked some experts about this as well. But I want us to focus on these two green dots here. These two dots are the developer's estimate of how much time they saved before they ran the study and after they ran the study. Pretty similar. We can see we're going to save about 25% time on a programming task. In fact, they lost time. Even after the study, they thought they saved time, but in reality, and these error bars are very large, so we can only really say that based on measurements of time saved, they actually lost time on programming tasks. And this is the difference between a direct observation and self-report. If we are relying solely on self-report data, we might be not understanding the actual impact of AI, not just on productivity, but on these kind of personification behaviors. So that's why we tend to recommend things like in-context learning methods and research methods over very, very tightly controlled studies, because AI is still very, very new. It's not novel anymore. It's been around for a number of years, especially in this current form, but it's certainly not mature. And so we need to allow ourselves to be open to results, to possibilities that we don't consider, and in-context methods can be really helpful with that. So things like field studies, contextual inquiry, diary studies can be really, really helpful for capturing problems or behavior that we don't necessarily anticipate by being close to users, observing what they're doing. Now with diary studies, I want to point out, a lot of diary studies are solely self-report data. Users over time longitudinally writing down kind of what they're experiencing with particular AI tools. But if you're conducting diary studies for personification and humanization in particular, pair it with some sort of more objective measure, analytics, their actual usage, their actual chat logs. I want to call out another one of my favorite research methods, and this is for when you have a hypothesis you want to test. Maybe you have some language changes that you want to see, oh, does this encourage humanization or is this okay? And that's the Wizard of Oz method. I brought my cat back. So this is where you have a puppet master behind the scenes. You can control an interface while a participant is using a particular experience. And for conversational interfaces, this can be relatively straightforward, where instead of, and this is a little strange, but instead of a large language model responding, you have a person behind the scenes responding, acting as a robot, and you can change the language there. And this is a way to test those different types of changes when it comes to personification. At the end of the day, we're trying to thread a needle here. We're trying to take advantage of AI's power and capabilities, but we don't want to encourage our users to personify and fall down this emotional rabbit hole of anthropomorphization. It is possible. You can deliver a natural language experience without encouraging your customers to humanize AI. Natural language interfaces, they're powerful, they're exciting, they enable things that were not possible before. They also bring huge risks for users and customers and businesses if we're not careful. So please resist the trap, the temptation to lean into personifying experiences to get a little bit more engagement, to juice your KPIs. It's not worth it, okay? Thank you very much. Dziękuję bardzo. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I want to point out, thank you. If you're looking for more resources or additional reading or to connect with me about any of these topics, I'm happy to. Feel free to scan the QR code. There's my contact information and resources as well. Also, ways that you can learn about NN Group's great work. We have lots of people working on AI, producing free articles and free resources. You can sign up for our newsletter to gain access to all of that as well. So thank you very much.
Huge thanks to Caleb. We have time for just a couple of questions. Magda is here with the mic, so if you have, okay, I'll already see a hand right there. So we will start.
Hi, thank you for this inspiring lecture. I have so many thoughts, starting from like how actually ChatGPT being empathetic is useful in the times of solitude of humans. But it's another thing. I wanted to ask, do you have any research or data about how do people see the chats that are inside the products or services and are supportive? Do they see them better or worse? Are they annoying if they have like any personality of names? Because in our companies, we're working on this and we see all the market has like humanized chats, and it gives them like market advantage. Are they really annoying? How much can we lose by being just an assistant and like being clear we're just a system? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. So the question is about targeted applications of kind of humanized AI in customer service in particular. I think that there are good opportunities to provide a strong customer experience and customer support experience through these services while still applying guardrails. You don't need to have a face or a name to these customer support experiences, but you can still be warm, you can still point users towards important resources, you can still resolve their problems, even if you're not named Chad or something like that. I think we don't have any empirical data at this point that we can talk about how users feel about customer service bots in particular, about whether they find benefits from that humanization or not. I will say customer service in particular can be more lenient with that experience because it tends to be more temporary. A customer isn't returning day after day after day after day, hopefully, to the same conversation. And so as long as it is made clear to the customer that they're not talking to a person, that they are talking to an artificial system, some of that warmer language can be introduced without too much risk. That's my take, without being able to talk about any particular research. But thank you very much.
Thanks again for the presentation. My question is, you mentioned that apparently lots of people fall down the rabbit hole of attaching to chatbots, especially the conversational ones, right? So even though I get your point and I totally agree, from the point of like the market, I assume that companies that will pour resources into
It's a hard word. It's a bad word.
Yeah.
Yes.
Their chatbots might technically be more successful because of how people are getting used to using the chatbots. So also what we can do to educate the people not to want anthropomorphizing.
Yes. So we have to decide how we are defining success. So success in many of those cases are user growth. People are coming back to these experiences. And we need to conduct research to see not just how many times they're coming back or how many people are coming back, but why are they coming back to these experiences? Is it because we are delivering real value or revenue to these people, our service, or are they sticking around for companionship or our emotional connection? And then you can make a decision of what business are we in? Because if you are an AI company that sells AI companionship, then fine, this talk doesn't apply to you. You want to encourage that behavior, right? But I assume many of us, again, are designing an interface to another service. So are they actually reaching that and using it, or are they stopping at this conversational experience? So I agree, it is very difficult to push back against stakeholders that see usage KPIs and they say, it's growing. People are using it, why would we want to stop that? But again, we've talked about all of the dangers of this personification trend. So thank you. It's an important, there's tension there. Yeah, thank you.
One last question, please.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for your talk. And I have more general one, I would say. So actually, the AI is currently more services like GPT, whatsoever, use this chat interface essentially, and it's for us as a humans, naturally we communicate with the people via chat. So there is something at the different side of the chat who we're communicating with. So don't you think that this is a problem with the medium itself? And if it will be different way how we leverage AI into our products, then we can get rid of this like humanization of the AI essentially, because the chat itself just kind of pushing towards humanization. But like if you're gonna use the different ways as Amazon do, because it's not a chat itself.
Yes, I agree. And that was the point I wanted to make with the tight scoping of the experience. Large language models, the easiest thing to do is a humanized chat experience. Just design a portal to the OpenAI API and just ship it, right? It requires more development time to build a scoped, limited experience that is more targeted, because you have to know what problem you want to solve, right? Turns out, if you want to build a good user experience, you have to start with a problem that a user is experiencing and then help solve it, and maybe AI can help with that. So yes, the chat medium is inherently humanizing. Yes?
All right, thank you so much. Thanks to Caleb.
Dziękuję, thank you so much.